there for a little over 3 years. Every year feels different.
See, I can hear you back here.
Ask for the focus up here. Thank you.
All right, let's get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. My name is Jennifer Rogers. I am your president for MCDA for this year. And I just want to welcome everybody, MCDA members, friends of ours, and actually I've decided that there is no such thing as a non-member, there's just a future member of MCDA. Yeah. And I'm going to, of course, warm welcome to our special guest, Tim O'Neill, from the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, otherwise known as DEED for most of us. And before I thank Cheryl, I would love to just know who's in the room here, and thank you for indulging us and maybe putting initials on your name tag. But I'd love to demonstrate how varied our group is with a physical display. So when you came in, you had a list of work settings where you might come from, and we asked you to maybe put initials there. So I'm going to just call out a work setting, and if you work there, please stand so we can physically see who's here. So I'm going to start, I'm going to try to do this in alphabetical order. Government sector. Who's here working in the government sector? Great. Thank you. Any graduate students? Okay. Higher education friends? Another big group. Okay. Nonprofit agencies? Oh, great. Wonderful. Thank you. Outplacement firms. That would be me and my friend Naomi, who didn't get here yet. And you kind of, okay, all right, standing up. Okay. And those in private independent practice in career coaching. Whatever. Yeah, great, wonderful. Isn't that great? So now we have representation, a nice, even representation, it looked to me like a lot of areas. And anybody I didn't call out, did you notice I had retiring having fun on the list? Any HR folks? Any HR folks? Did you need something?
Your mic seems to keep coming in.
Oh no, that's not helpful. Is it in my pocket? Maybe that's it. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Sorry, we're so grateful for the test. Is that better? I can sing out to each other. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Thank you. So we come from a lot of different places. This is the only organization like this in the state of Minnesota, and we are an affiliate of the National Career Development Association. Proud to say. Our members can obtain continuing education use through MCDA, and if anybody needs CEUs, you were asked about that on the way in, there's a sign-in sheet at the desk. Is there anybody here who needs CEUs who did not sign in when they came in? We're good. Okay, thank you. I need to, of course, thank my partner in crime here with this wonderful event today, our fellow member and our St. Paul College host, Cheryl Saul. And she is currently the chair of our Professional Development Committee. And this could not have happened without her. So,
not true, because Jennifer did a lot of the work for this when I was out on medical leave. So we were able to pull it together.
team effort.
We were able to pull it together. A couple of logistical items for you. If you are parked on Marshall Avenue, please go move your car now and save yourself a ticket. We have parking vouchers, so just come into the entrance down here and park anywhere in the college parking to avoid that hassle. I don't think you'll be towed, but you might be ticketed, likely would be ticketed.
Someone asked, what is the process for, I guess, validating it?
Right.
Like, what is the way you do it?
Right. So you should have gotten the voucher when you registered. What happens is you will go, I'm pretty sure you have to use the Marshall Avenue exit. The ticket that you pulled when you came in is what you put in first. When it asks for payment, you put in a voucher and the arm will go out for you. Okay? Any other questions about parking? All right. Restrooms you probably saw are just across the hall from us here. The Wi-Fi network is listed on the program at the bottom. So that should be pretty self-explanatory. You don't need to have a password or anything like that. Any other logistical things to cover?
You have the program in front of you, and we're going to try our best to follow it, but don't hold us to it.
There's actually a misprint on it too, so just know that means we're going to be a little bit fluid with our timing.
I have a few more things. Thank you. Thanks. I also want to thank the volunteers who you saw at the check-in table today. Raise your hand. Brandon Ballou from Goodwill Easter Seals, thank you. And Beth Johnson, who is our communications I'd like to ask any MCDA board members and committee members to stand and be recognized. Current board members and committee members. Before we introduce Tim, I have to selfishly take this opportunity to give a show and tell of our new website. We hope that this will be live before January 1st, so you all are getting a sneak peek at it. But we've been hard at work working on this since the summer. It takes a lot longer than you think to do that. I just want to point out a few highlights and differences. So the organization information is now, of course, in a huge scroll like you do through new web pages. And we are still under construction in a few places, but I just wanted to point this information out. We have a new organizational membership category for organizations, so that's going to be a nice plus for us this year, up to 3 staff members and above, so there'll be a discounted rate there. And some of you will see your faces amongst these photos from the past years. So just want to point that out. There's only 3 sections I want to really highlight. So in this About section, you'll notice that when I hover about the boards, there's a separate section for committees, and this is my shameless plug to say, would you like to get involved? Would you like to join us and bring your talents and your gifts to one of our committees, because we could use you anywhere. And we're now going to be starting to launch this winter into our spring 2025 conference planning. So all of you closet event planners, we really need you. And if you don't want to do the planning, if you want to actually offer a session, you know, there's opportunities there. Working the day of, there's all kinds of opportunities. So I have to do that shameless plug there. The professional resources, LeVar, this may not look familiar to you, but we've created a lot of different subsections of this, highlighting our mentoring program, a section for local organizations and affiliates, national, regional, other professional, sister-related organizations, and a job board for career professionals. Now, this is not the way it used to be. We used to ask people if you wanted to type in a form. They could do that, but this is really just going to be a listing of potential resources for you. If any of your organizations are hiring for folks in our field of career development or training and things like that, we're going to drive you to our LinkedIn group, Minnesota Career Development Association, under Groups in LinkedIn, and please post messages through that LinkedIn group when you have job openings. And we're going to remind people of that in our newsletters today. Thanks for that. Yeah. And the last piece that I wanted to highlight is for job seekers and organizations. For those, there's a resource for us who are counseling and coaching folks. And we, thanks to Tina Wagner, we have created a much more organized list of resources for us to use in our work with our clients. And we're trying to put all the biggest and best and brightest of websites here to make it easy access for those of us. So I'm hoping that this is helpful to you and helpful to us, all of us. I'm going to find it helpful, I know, especially in the other thing you noticed is we're retaining the Find a Career Coach section, so dues-paying MCDA members who are in private practice and are taking independent clients can add their name to this directory. We said no photos. Gosh, this is super large. And so I'm just letting you know that we've got this available, and we're going to be adding a Find a Trainer section. We've had a request from Boston Scientific, so many of us in this field don't just do individual client work, but we also are trainers in the career development field. So we're going to have a way to make ourselves known to organizations and businesses that need trainers specifically in the career development or employee relations, employer retention efforts, and talent attraction. So wanted you to know that. I will be putting out to folks an email about a call from Boston Scientific. That's my team. So without further ado, thank you for your attention. I hope this is going to be fun. And I'm going to introduce our speaker, Tim O'Neill. Actually, I'm not going to introduce you. You're going to introduce yourself. And you have his bio here. So welcome, Tim.
I feel like a keynote speaker when I use these things. I wouldn't consider myself a keynote speaker though, or a motivational speaker. Although I suppose labor market data can be motivational in certain ways. Hi everybody, Tim O'Neill here. A lot of familiar faces, so I almost feel like I don't need to do introductions too much. But yeah, I work for Deed. I work for Deed, which I'm guessing most of you are familiar with. Specifically within the Labor Market Information Office, which you probably know about, but feel free to visit us anytime on a Wednesday. We go into the office on Wednesday. We're headquartered just down a few roads here at the Great Northern Building in St. Paul. We're on the 12th floor. Actually, might have to call to get access. But yeah, I work with a team of about 20-25 analysts. And it's on their shoulders of a lot of these analysts that, as a regional labor market analyst, I'm for the 7-county metro area. So covering Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Scotts, and Washington counties. And so the other regional analysts and myself, we cover greater Minnesota. So I think there's some folks from Duluth here. So you're stuck with Carson Gorecki.
I am.
Yep. Is anyone from southeast Minnesota? Rochester area? How about northwest Minnesota? Central or Southwest? Nice. So you're stuck with Luke Greiner and Cameron Mott. Yep. Which they're all of them are great. And so reach out to us anytime. I suppose while I've got your attention at the beginning, we can be a resource for you for data analysis and dissemination and helping out with the 20+ labor market information tools that we have. If you don't want to reach out to us, I can at least tell you where you can find the tools and find our publications. We even have a publication on, a part of my presentation here today will be on AI's impact on our labor market and economy. Don't expect like too in-depth of an analysis. One of the things that I discovered in the article that I read actually that Luke and Cameron put together, and some of the other articles that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has put together and other researchers, is that this is a highly evolving and transforming technology and movement, I suppose, within the world of technology. And our analysis and our interpretation of AI and just how it affects our economy and labor market, it's going to change tomorrow. It's going to change next week, next year. It's eye-opening to see how quickly AI is transforming and improving and going across all these different areas of industry and occupation, work, society, life. It's amazing. With that in mind, knowing that I won't get into the nuts and bolts too much with AI, but I will talk about this article that we've recently put out on AI's impact on our labor market, specifically looking at AI's exposure to different industries and occupations. There is another speaker that I have seen talk about AI. You may have too, Mike Kutzke, and Kutzke. He's a wonderful speaker. He's talking about AI transforming the workforce. And he talks a little bit more. I saw him speak at a recent workforce board meeting, and actually he's going to be speaking at a Dakota Scott workforce board meeting on December 11th at 11:45 a.m. So if you want to see more, hear more about just the intricacies of AI, and he'll actually specifically go into even some of the tools of AI, like ChatGPT, which was introduced in 2022. It's amazing that, I first heard about it in 2022, like ChatGPT, what's that? Oh, you can make like cool pictures with it, and it's helping out my D&D group and stuff like that. But it's amazing to see how it's exploded since then with tools like Microsoft Copilot, Perplexity, Claude. Grammarly is using some of that AI, Google Gemini, or is it Gemini? So there's a lot of tools, and it's going to keep expanding with these tools that are available to us and the ways that you can use these tools. Just quick, we actually we took a little class in St. Cloud at the technical college there on AI and how to use different AI tools, and it was eye-opening to see. I was kind of dragging my feet on using AI. It's like, I want to use my own creative juices and the work that I do with like the blogs that I write and the analysis that I do with the labor market data that we have available. But that class did actually open my eyes to how AI can help with efficiency and productivity and creativity. And it was amazing to throw in spreadsheets and throw in articles and PDFs and some of the data tools that we've got. Work that our Labor Market Information Office uses and does again with the surveys, the administrative data, and the censuses that we do and that we have. Throw them into these AI tools and put in prompts like write a screenplay with labor market data, or write jokes, or things like that. And it was really cool seeing like actual play productions, musicals, like using labor market data. It was very impressive to see what some of these tools can use and do. So again, the creativity there, looking into things that I, on my own, will not think about. It's pretty cool to see how AI can be kind of a helping hand into the work that I do. And I think that's going to be how we can look at it today. And we'll see what happens tomorrow and next year and over the next 5-10 years. But I think the assistance and the helping hand that AI can have for the work that we do, whatever work that it is, I think that's going to be huge. Just one more example, and we can do questions anytime and comments anytime. One other thing, an example of how AI might help in the workplace too, beyond the productivity and the efficiency and the creativity and the work that we do with all these different tools that are out there available to us today, is I was at an association of manufacturers not too long ago, and that actually came up, AI, and how are you using AI? And it was just interesting thinking about manufacturing, which manufacturing has come up before when it comes to automation, and we've done studies on how automation might impact the labor market, specifically in areas like manufacturing and construction. And this is a big takeaway of the article. I'm still on some thunder from later for right now, where if you've seen some articles that we've done in the past, for instance, through Steve Hine, our former director of the office, he, about 4 or 5 years ago, did this really in-depth study on automation's impact on the labor market, and specifically how that would be impacting more blue-collar work, manual work, things like that, kind of repetitive tasks, bundling up tasks using ONET. And I see that ONET is a big part of, one of those links in MCDA, so that's great to see. But then, yeah, how it's impacting blue-collar work. And now it's interesting with just transforming technologies with AI, and the main takeaway is that we're seeing more from some research, including the research that we've done, that's going to be impacting more white-collar work. with the technologies that are available there. So we've got a lot of different transforming, changing things that are happening in our labor market, in our economy, in our society, in our life, that it's a highly evolving labor market right now. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, is the labor market's in constant motion. Things are constantly changing. We're trying to keep up with it. We're trying to do proactive articles like this one on AI, although ChatGPT started in 2022. Technology around AI started well before that. So we're trying to keep up with it. We're trying to keep as best as we can with the analysis that we have up with it. So just keep checking out the labor market data that we have. Keep checking out the technology that's available to you. And like myself, maybe try not to drag your feet on AI. It's really cool to see what it can do. So just check it out, I suppose.
I was just going to say that I put in a plus. So the article that Tim is referring to on AI, I don't know if anybody saw it in their publications, I have a live link to that.
Great.
If you look at the current MCDA website under blog, there's a blog article there with hyperlinks to that article and I think another base article. I think one of your more recent ones from the summer.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that was on employment projections, I believe. So while we're talking about AI, I suppose I'll just throw up the slides that we have from this article that I'll give kudos to my supervisor, Cameron Mox. Reach out to him anytime. And also my colleague in Central Minnesota, Luke Greiner. They were looking into this. They've got a whole footnote section in this article too. So whenever you're looking at our data tools, always keep your eye out for, there's always going to be a methodology tab, where the information is coming from. You'll get a copy of these PowerPoint slides for those that are watching the recording later. I will not, because I do not like to see myself being recorded. I don't like to hear my voice. But anyway, you can check out all the methodology and all the resources that we looked into for all of our tools, including this article on AI, which the title's at the top there. Measuring Artificial Intelligence in Minnesota's Economy, and the URL is right there on this slide as well. So you can check out this and a lot of other articles and methodologies and how we put our information together and what can it do for you in all these different roles that you have. So that's what labor market data is there for, to make better, more informed, more responsive decisions, and to have a greater understanding for what is happening in Minnesota, what's happening in my local area, and how can I use that greater understanding for the endeavors that I've got. And speaking of those endeavors and greater understanding, so again, this is kind of looking at AI from a specific angle of what is the exposure going to be for different occupations and industries in the state. So it's not specifically looking at, is it going to be beneficial for different jobs? Is it going to be detrimental for different jobs? It's strictly looking at what is the potential for exposure to different types of occupations and industries. When we're looking at the benefits and the possible maybe detrimental impacts of AI, you can look into a lot of different articles on that. The big takeaway is that a lot of folks don't really know. There are going to be benefits of AI. Again, with creativity and productivity and efficiency, it might create new jobs. It also might cause jobs to be lost, but the extent of that is yet to be seen. I think it is going to be very similar, though, to that analysis that Steve Hine did on automation, for example, and that was a big part of it, too. How is automation going to impact different industries and occupations? And the main takeaway there was the same. There's going to be some benefits, there's going to be job creation, there's going to be different types of skill sets that employers are looking for, and then other skill sets and maybe some tasks of different occupations are going to be changed or replaced or substituted or lost. But overall, with automation and with AI, it's not going to have an immediate impact. There's actually a quote that I put in here. Well, there are some immediate impacts, but in terms of jobs being lost and things like that, we'll see what happens. I do have a quote in here somewhere, though. AI will not replace most jobs at any time soon. There's a significant misunderstanding of the difference between AI passing a test versus doing a task versus fulfilling a job. But one thing is sure, those workers with AI will beat those without. So this is Charles Fidel, somebody that Cameron and Luke were interviewing for their work on this article. And apparently he's got a pretty good knowledge of AI. So check out his research on this as well. But going back to the first slide on this, the big part that they were talking about with AI's impact on our labor market was looking into educational attainment and wages. And so one of the big things that they did see, and I alluded to this earlier, and you see it on the slide here, maybe, I'll explain it here, where they broke up the jobs, the total number of jobs in Minnesota, there's about 3 million jobs, into different categories, quartiles here, of highest exposure to lowest exposure. And then looking at those jobs that have the highest exposure to AI and its impacts are going to be a lot of those jobs that the yellow is showing. That's our bachelor's degree, light blue master's degree, and green doctoral or professional degrees. And then, so we're going from highest exposure on the left on the bar chart to lowest exposure. And so for lowest exposure, you see those two on the far right, mainly including the dark blue high school diploma or equivalent as required for these jobs. And then some with post-secondary non-degree awards being orange for those bars. So yeah, looking at the highest exposure then, impacting about 1.6 million jobs, so about 56% of Minnesota's total employment today, we anticipate to be highly impacted, highly exposed to the effects of artificial intelligence. And then this top blurb here, basically saying what I said before, we don't know what the specific impacts will be, but you can be assured that there will be some disruptions, there will be some enhancements, and there will even be some job creation. The big thing of AI then is another big takeaway in the article is just educating those that are helping out job seekers, career seekers, employment counselors, educating HR folks, and so on to the impacts of AI. How can we utilize this? Again, going back to the Manufacturers Association, I know it specifically said what they were talking about, but they were talking about using AI to make more efficient their HR processes of onboarding and creating job postings and applications and looking through those. So that was really interesting to see where, yeah, in the past, some were saying it might have taken all day to create a job posting, but I just used AI and I created one in about 30 minutes. So it was really cool to see the efficiency that they were using for AI in an industry sector that you might not expect AI to be used. Kind of a big takeaway here then with impacting education, impacting higher wage jobs. So I'm just going to read this blurb. 70% of employment in occupations with the highest exposure to AI have a median wage higher than $60,000 per year, and over 75% of occupations that typically require a bachelor's degree or higher are in the high exposure group. So once more again, just reiterating that we're seeing in a lot of research, including our own, that AI and its impacts on the labor market are going to more strongly impact those jobs that have higher wages and higher educational attainment levels. I did do some quick research on my own though of some Bureau of Labor Statistics analysis that they've done. I was talking to Cindy about this, and they were looking into kind of a challenge to this. So it's good to have the challenges too, but they were looking into, well, a lot of employers might actually be hiring right now for folks that have higher education, STEM education, data analysis, things like that, where they know about and have used AI as a skill set. So it's interesting where a lot of analysis does show it's going to impact and will affect jobs with higher education requirements and higher wages. But then on the other hand, maybe we want more folks with these skill sets, which might require higher education and they might have higher wages. So again, there's just a lot of motion in the labor market, and it might take some time to see what the impacts of AI are in the long term.
With that chart on the right there, or table, what are the colored bars on some of the?
Yeah, the colored, so the chart on the right there is, so the AI exposure, don't ask me specifics about that. That was essentially, Cameron and Luke, I'll reach out to them. You can also reach out to them, but that was their methodology in seeing how does AI, looking at the bundle of tasks within using ONET data. So seeing the tasks for different occupations and then the impact of AI with these specific tasks, and then linking it to Dean's occupational employment and wage statistics data. I tried to overwhelm you with some acronyms and some data there, basically saying I'm not quite sure, what that number means, but it does have a look at those occupations with the highest exposure to AI are going to be listed from top to bottom, and then I've got one more table here showing the ones at the lower end. We've got the occupational title then, things like genetic counselors, financial examiners, actuaries, budget analysts, procurement clerks, and so on. And then we have the typical education requirement for entry. So again, you're seeing a lot of those jobs with higher educational attainment levels. And then on the very far right, you're seeing that median annual wage. And then you're also seeing the red, the green, the yellow. I didn't put it in there, but that's basically showing, again, what's the educational attainment that's required. So the red is bachelor's degree, the yellow is going to be master's degree, the green is going to be doctoral or professional degree, and then the length of the bar is showing the total employment of that occupation in the state of Minnesota. So for example, accountants and auditors, there's a lot of accountants and auditors in the state of Minnesota's labor market. Not as many genetic counselors, so you barely even see a bar there. There's going to be a lot of management analysts, there's going to be a lot of market research analysts and marketing specialists. So going to the industries then, you can start to see that those industries that are going to have a higher exposure to AI are going to be industries like management of companies, financial activities, professional, scientific, and technical services, which is computer systems design, architecture and engineering, management, consulting, and technical services, things like that where they're highly concentrated in St. Paul, in Minneapolis, Ramsey, Hennepin counties, the metro areas in the state of Minnesota, including metro areas like Duluth. And so that's where the exposure is going to be for AI. Then you look at the next table. These are, I just took a screenshot. This is on the tools. If you go to the URL, you can check out all the occupations and get a little bit more detail if you actually hover over them as well. But these are the ones at the bottom: exercise trainers and group fitness instructors, reinforcing iron and rebar workers, fence erectors, roofers and dishwashers, floor sanders and finishers. You can start to get a sense of, yeah, these are going to be probably those occupations where maybe they're not going to be using AI so much. They're going to be more hands-on. They're going to be more maybe outdoors, things where AI is just not going to have as much exposure to these types of occupations. As I was saying before, though, it might be surprising, as we'll see, where AI might be able to lend a hand in the different types of work that's out there. And then this is just another kind of cool little graph looking at low exposure, low wage, high exposure, low wage, low exposure, high wage, like plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters here, making up the largest bubble. Post-secondary non-degree award. The green here is showing those occupations that require a high school diploma or equivalent. And then finally, high exposure and high wage. And so that's where you see like your genetic counselors, things like that. We just put a couple, again, I'll pass these slides out. I'm not going to read these verbatim, but you can check these out, just two examples of how AI might or might not be highly exposed to, in this case, exercise trainers and group fitness instructors and genetic counselors. And then finally, we have those industries that are already listed that might have higher exposure to AI, and then those geographies, those counties that are going to have higher exposure to AI just based off of the industry distribution and concentration that those geographies have. And then this is what I was trying to say. This is more apt in saying it. Educational services is not only highly exposed to AI at all levels, but, and this is what I was trying to say, but this is more defined for educational services. Educators themselves will also be responsible for equipping students with the necessary skills to compete in the labor market, looking at things like AI in the labor market. So any questions on AI in the labor market? Yeah, I suppose I would just say check some of these tools out. Getting a little first-hand experience on using some of the AI tools that are out there, like ChatGPT, like Claude, like Perplexity, like Microsoft Copilot, like Grammarly. I know Google right away also just has a little AI word that it does. I was looking up like how to roast chicken the other day, and like an AI thing came up. It's like, okay, thanks. But it is really surprising when you start to put in even data that you're working with. In my case, it was labor market reports and data sets from Excel and things like that, and having it look through those Excel spreadsheets and things like that, and then saying, hey, what are you seeing in this data? And then it's pulling out little blurbs and little analysis that I might not have caught myself. So again, efficiency, creativity, productivity. So that was the one section of my presentation that I was not expecting to do at the very beginning. I usually do my introductions and look through all the resources that are available. So my apologies for mixing up the presentation here a little bit, but while we were talking about AI, I thought, let's just go right into the slides. Just keep that in mind then when we're looking at a lot of this other data and what's going on in the state of Minnesota. And I think just keep in mind the overall takeaway that I've had as a labor market analyst for about 10 years, 12 years now, I've been a labor market analyst. And I would say within the last 1, 2, 3 years, with recovery from COVID, with automation in the workplace, with AI, with other movements like career and technical education, the increase of apprenticeships, internships, just alternative pathways into the labor market, different ways that job seekers, career seekers, parents, students, employment counselors, all of us can understand what is going on in the state of Minnesota. And I think a huge thing that I've learned is that it's in constant motion. There's so much going on. I was talking to some students at the University of Minnesota the other day, and I was telling them I was pretty jealous about where they're at in their pathways right now. I was telling them I graduated in 2010 when the Great Recession was happening, kind of did that traditional route of getting a 4-year degree, a history degree, and then it's like, oh my gosh, the labor market's tough. And I feel like I was kind of pushed into this kind of direct route of getting a bachelor's degree and then looking for work. And I did the old time tested way of just shooting my resume out to like 50 to 60 employers and seeing what I could get. And the state of Minnesota got back to me, and that was great, and here I am. Cost of college, all that kind of stuff, we talked about that too. But for them, again, I was talking about all these new and creative pathways into the labor market. And we can look at those pathways with the data that we've got. So it's pretty cool labor market right now. Any questions? Yeah.
So I haven't used ChatGPT or anything, but I've noticed when I Google lately, the answer is AI generated.
Yeah.
So then I wonder, is this as good as the answer I would have got before?
Right. Yeah, so it's really interesting. I believe it is. So it gives you a little summary of what you're looking for and then some extra information that you didn't even ask for, which is pretty cool. You can click on that view more and it just keeps going. But yeah, again, I would test out some of those other tools to see what you can do. And there's even classes, I believe, or resources on how to do different prompts for AI and see what goes on there with honing your skills of prompts for these AI tools and how it can be more beneficial then. When I was talking about that other speaker on AI, Mike Kutsky, transforming the workforce using AI, he goes a little bit more into like AI prompting and also the differences between tools like Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT. There are some significant and some subtle differences between those different tools on who owns them, what's going on with the data that you input into them, kind of their main purpose. So worth checking out. So getting back to the labor market then, of course AI is part of the labor market now, but the resources that we have to review just quick, we've got some resources for government, we have resources for businesses, which I would highly recommend checking out. For instance, our workforce strategy consultants, they have a Workforce Wednesday that they do that's really cool seeing. They have employer panels, they talk about different populations in the state, they talk about different strategies for hiring workers or retaining workers, they talk about different disparities in employment barriers, they talk about different ways that you can get assistance from the state of Minnesota. So check those out. All the blue links, cool stuff. We also have, of course, some resources for job seekers and career seekers, including Career Force, and there's other resources too that I've thrown in here that MCDA already has linked, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Outlook Handbook and ONET, which I believe they're both wonderful. ONET has actually helped out with our analysis of AI again. Create a job search guide. Career One Stop is also great. They actually, I think, package up labor market data a little bit more visually pleasing and a little bit more user-friendly for students and parents. But if you want to get to the source of the information, our Labor Market Information Office is great. We have 20 plus tools again. We have publications, again, looking into AI. Another one looking into our 2022 to 2032 employment projections. Quick teaser, we project Minnesota's total labor market to expand by 4.6% through 2032. That's equivalent to approximately 145,000 net new jobs. The big story there, though, is that on top of the 145,000 net new jobs, we anticipate 1.53 million labor market exit openings. And these are essentially replacement openings, essentially due to workers that are going to be retiring, current workers that retire or otherwise leave the labor market. So there's a lot of different forces happening in the labor market. We'll see what happens with new administration at the highest levels and how that might impact things. Can't really look into that yet, but yeah, you can be rest assured that there's going to be a lot of changes going on with just overall trends that we're already seeing in terms of an aging population and labor force, and in terms of an increasingly diverse population and labor force. So again, I could go into a ton of different directions right now with the labor market, talking about AI, talking about automation, talking about increasing diversity, talking about aging, talking about new technologies, what industries are in different local areas. We can look up what employers are moving in, what employers are staying, retention strategies. There's just so many different areas to look into. So hopefully my presentation so far is causing some good, overwhelming thoughts.
I thought I'd add another one to your list. Is there anything about climate change
Oh yeah,
and its effect on the market?
definitely. Thanks for bringing that up. That's actually another big article that's in our most recent Trends publication, and we actually just hired a new analyst, and their sole purpose is to look at green and clean energy and employment across the state. So they're starting out with, they've had 2 articles now, and I can link them here to Jennifer, and she can pass them off to all of you, along with the PowerPoint, along with the AI article and the employment projections article. But the first 2 articles, she's looking at how do we define green and clean employment and what's already been happening in the state. So she looked at that. She's looking at occupations now. What are those occupations that are green and clean? What's going on with different initiatives across the state of Minnesota? Of course, there's going to be a lot in greater Minnesota on agriculture. There's going to be a lot going on with construction and with transportation and utilities when it comes to green and clean energy and employment. So I'll send those out because it's definitely a huge thing when we're talking about climate change. So you can also check out some resources through all of this data, through the Bureau of Labor Statistics as well. And they have their own analysis on green and clean employment as well as AI in the labor market. Just a couple of examples, other things we can look at. Remote work, how that might change, how it is changing. Also looking at things like jobs paying less than $15 an hour, home and community-based care versus institution-based care. It's really eye-opening when you're looking at the differences there and the trends over time. And then occupational demand there. So there's just a lot of cool things that you can look into or read about, either through the DEED website, through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or through other organizations and nonprofits and agencies that we work with, like the Department of Labor and Industry, like Minnesota Compass, like the Bureau of Economic Analysis, like the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, MCDA. There's just so many different organizations, agencies, companies, nonprofits that are looking into what's going on in the state of Minnesota. So this is the team then. So reach out to myself or any of the other regional labor market analysts. If you want to learn more about this article on AI, I felt like I was just kind of summarizing it. I was like a personal AI for all of you. I'm not artificial though. Anyway, looking at, if you want to learn more about it, reach out to Cameron and me. And then you, of course, can reach out to our leadership at any time. Angelina Wen, our director, Orion Casal, our assistant director. And then I also put Alessia Leiber, research project manager. She does a ton of work with the tools that we have. She's just a great resource. She kind of makes a lot of us look bad. She does like 20-page articles and we do like 4. And she's creating tools left and right. She just created a tool on high school pathways into post-secondary education and the labor market with career and technical education. So this is a brand new tool on that. She's done a bunch of articles on that as well, including men and women in CTE. So just really cool stuff coming from Alessia. You can add on to that graduate employment outcomes data as well as occupations in demand data. So I've talked a lot. I've got a little bit of time yet. So this is that guaranteed section where you're going to get the most recent numbers. You may have seen me present. I did a couple of training sessions recently. One where my internet wasn't working, so if you're in that one, I apologize. But here's a quick overview of the labor market. Feel free to ask questions anytime. So, it's just kind of cool to see how many jobs there are, or the industry breakdown. Sometimes we forget these things. I forget these things. I do have some notes here that I wrote down, so I might have to look down once in a while. But it's pretty eye-opening to see, just for example, Minnesota has over 3 million jobs across the state. We're a large employment state. We've gained a lot of jobs from the whiplash that we experienced during COVID-19, where we lost 415,000 jobs over the course of 2 months. And we've since regained all of those jobs, plus an additional about 40,000 jobs. Actually, some of our more recent, if you go to our website, every month you can look up your own analysis that we've done, or our analysis of what we've done in like a 4-page little report that we do on what's the most recent data telling us. And in those most recent report, they actually didn't even talk about COVID anymore. We're kind of moving on from that in terms of, okay, now we're moving on from 2023 and 2024, we're going into 2025. We've recovered all of our jobs from COVID. Let's see how things are changing now going forward. But I think it's still eye-opening to see, of course, what happened during COVID and how we've recovered since. We gained 33,300 jobs over the year. We did lose 1,000 jobs over the month of October, but when you're looking at 3 million jobs, we were essentially flat over the month of October. If we do look at both the monthly changes in industry employment and the yearly changes in industry employment, I'll kind of let you look at it. But kind of similar in terms of what industries are gaining the most jobs. At the very top, healthcare and social assistance. Healthcare and social assistance far and away has the most jobs in the state of Minnesota. Far and away has gained the most jobs over the past decade. Far and away will gain the most jobs over the next decade. And we're seeing that in the data over the month, and we're seeing that in the data over the year. Where the state lost 1,000 jobs over the month, healthcare and social assistance gained 1,300 jobs. Where the state gained, again, 33,000 plus jobs over the year. Education and health services, all in healthcare, gained 33,400 jobs. So we did have some industries that lost jobs, like professional and business services. We did see some losses over the year in manufacturing and construction, as well as financial activities and information. But healthcare and social assistance more than enough made up for these losses. So we saw increases in healthcare, government, leisure and hospitality, other services, and trade, transportation, and utilities. When I do mention those industries that have lost jobs, like manufacturing or construction, keep in mind the seasonality. We're looking at an October release, so there's going to be some seasonality that comes into play there. Also keep in mind what I was saying before about replacement openings. Just because an industry lost jobs over the month or over the year doesn't mean that that industry, of course, isn't hiring right now. Think back to the replacement openings and turnover. There's always going to be hiring going on. When you're looking at these numbers, that's the net change. There were jobs gained, there were jobs lost, and this kind of goes more towards, I guess it's my theme of the presentation, that the labor market's in constant motion.
I just have kind of a comment on this with some of the employers that we've been working with as a college, specifically in manufacturing and construction, that decrease perhaps has to do with their clients waiting until the election results before they make decisions about big developments.
Yeah, I saw that within the BLS report as well. Thanks for bringing that up. And another big thing for the October release was at the national level, the hurricanes, Milton and Helene, as well as the longshoreman strike. So these things do have an impact on the numbers that we're gathering at the national level. And then the wage and inflation, that's been a hot topic, of course, too, which is in constant motion. And so we had really high inflation during 2021 and 2022. That's come back down. Inflation up over the year, 2.6%. Wages increased over the year in Minnesota, 3.3%. I should apologize one more time. Break the rules of PowerPoint. You saw the slides on AI. Those are my boss's slides. He does not break the rules of PowerPoint, although maybe too much narrative. I guess we don't need to go into the pros and cons of our different ways of doing PowerPoints. It's a size 14 font. Anyway, yeah, again, looking at healthcare, 500,000 plus jobs. Manufacturing, 325,000. And you can go out, how many establishments are there? What's the total payroll? What's the average annual wages? You can get some really great analysis on understanding for Minnesota as a whole. And then your local area. With this data, we can look again into the 7-county metro, northeast Minnesota, whatever planning region you want to look into. We can also look into the counties. And it's eye-opening to see how different local economies are.
Can you give some examples of wholesale trade?
Wholesale trade, I think, well, companies that come to mind are like Amazon or yeah, yep. Say C.H. Robinson. Trucking and shipping. Gosh, good question. This is something actually that's...
Is there a place place I've looked in the Minnesota Deed website where you define in detail your industries
No.
with examples?
That's where I would write down, you can Google search NAICS, BLS NAICS, or Census NAICS.
Oh,
NAICS. So I would NAICS and then Census, because the Census has a really great website on defining these industries. Shoot, I don't usually get a question on wholesale trade. I usually get a question on social assistance, like what's in social assistance. But
I was going to ask about that. I'm assuming that the driver for that is an aging population.
yes,
And what
Yeah.
else?
Yep, there's vocational rehabilitation services in there, there's services for the elderly, there's relief and emergency services in there. So, and then also childcare services are in social assistance.
How about food processing / manufacturing, not including farming? Is there a category for that?
Yeah, so I did write down that one. Shoot, I feel bad about wholesale trade. I'll get back to you on that. But manufacturing, for example, I was going to bring that up with, not only can you get into specific geographies, but you can get more in depth with these industry sectors too. So manufacturing is huge. We just had Manufacturing Month, where we talked all about manufacturing, and it's vital for the state of Minnesota. But when you break down manufacturing, there's 21 major subsectors, and at the very top is food manufacturing.
Is that growing in Minnesota?
Food manufacturing, I would say it's holding steady. Might be some losses, but again, looking at automation and productivity, there's a lot of intricacies that we could talk about with manufacturing when it comes to that. Another one, for example, is right after food manufacturing, fabricated metal, and right after fabricated metal, computer and electronic product manufacturing. So already we have at the very top of manufacturing 3 distinct subsectors that have very different needs for skill sets for educational attainment, and then very different types of entry points and occupations in general. So fab metal is going to have your welders, your CNC operators, your machinists, and then like computer and electronic product, you're going to have software developers and industrial engineers and electrical engineers. So yeah, it's really, and food manufacturing, you're going to have food batch makers and meat slaughters and things like that. So it's really interesting to see. And packagers, filling machine operators, and then you're going to have jobs outside of that as well. And this goes for every industry sector, or even in manufacturing, you're going to have your need for things like office administrative support jobs, managerial jobs, IT jobs, things like that. So it's really eye-opening then when you're looking not only at geographies, maybe how is Ramsey County different from Hennepin or Dakota or Scott or things like that, or Pine or Carlton or counties like that, but also just what's the difference between the industries themselves and the occupations. And then that's where you can get into the AI exposure on different industries and occupations too. So there's just a lot to think about here. Were there any other questions?
Does your data show anticipated job outlook, demand?
Yes. So I've got some slides coming up on that too. Okay, so that's industry sectors. This is a look at way too much data. You can look at this for fun. This the weekend coming up. Also say like Thanksgiving's coming up, and with the election, something not political. I won't get political, don't worry. But there might be some differences. So if you just want to like bypass all of that at the dinner table, just pull up a projector and a screen and show them.
Not after you eat your turkey.
That's right. Yeah, I feel like I do speak a lot after lunches, for instance. Labor market data and turkey would not mix either. But yeah, just quick, when you're looking at it for fun later, I put a couple of different trend lines in here for the different industries. So we've got over the year annual, pre-COVID to the most recent annual, 2019 and 2023. I highlighted in green those industries that saw the most percentage change growth between pre-COVID and most recent annual. So health and social assistance. It's interesting to see the more recent losses in professional, scientific, and technical, but still above 2019 levels by quite a bit, as well as construction. Wholesale trade shows up again. Transportation and warehousing, and then we have agriculture and utilities, showing some significant growth from pre-COVID to 2022. And then I put over the past decade. I will say this quarterly census of employment and wages, this is kind of the powerhouse of our labor market information office. It's data that's required by employers to report to us through the unemployment insurance program. And we update it quarterly. We actually have data now through the second quarter of 2024.
Information, does that include like software developers, computer, cybersecurity, and that sort of thing?
Oh,
No, that's-
so that's a common one that kind of misconceptions about. Information is largely publishing industry,
Oh, okay.
printing, things like that. That's why we've seen over the past decade big losses in information. The one that has IT mainly, the highest concentration is professional, scientific, and technical services. So these 168,000, almost 170,000 jobs, I actually broke this one down too. The top subsectors in that industry are computer systems design, management, scientific, and technical consulting services, architecture and engineering services, and interestingly enough, legal services. So it's quite the mix of industries within that major industry sector. Moving on from the, question.
Just about that, where is the bulk of the declines happening within that professional scientific?
We've seen some losses, for example, within computer systems design. There's been a crunch within IT jobs. It's really competitive right now. I will say, I kind of brought this up for the students the other day too. So over the past 2 years, from 2021 to 2022, there's like 2,000 less job openings for IT jobs. Saw the same loss of about 2,000 jobs less from 2022 to 2023. So we've seen this really big loss of job opportunities within IT. But then if you look a little bit longer term, we're still at about the same level of job openings in IT that we were in 2018 and 2019. And you saw me present then, I was talking about a tight labor market and that we have a lot of demand for workers. So there was a lot of hiring during COVID. You probably all read about that with IT. We've seen those losses since then. Companies are kind of pulling back on that, but there's still some demand for IT workers, and there's still a lot of competition. There's still high wages, and there's still some opportunities there. So that's looking at IT, looking at labor market information, looking at AI. That's where I think everything's in motion, and it's important to look at the short term and the long term. Any other questions?
I have a question about manufacturing. I'm in the Vadnais Heights Labor Lake area,
Yeah.
and that has been traditionally a big area for manufacturing, and some were smaller. This year, when we were trying to gather up people to do things with manufacturing, there wasn't as much interest. And I'm wondering if that's actually a trend. One employer just said, yeah, we're so busy, we don't even have time to look right now. And somebody else said, yeah, we're pretty well set. We don't need to hire anyone.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
No, we've seen that too, where
Okay.
we've seen just stability, I would say, overall in manufacturing. I would say that I've seen some recent reports and presentations from the Minneapolis Fed Reserve, and they've seen the same thing. They actually do more in-depth kind of surveys of employers, and they get some qualitative anecdotes and things like that from employers that way. And that's essentially what they're seeing too. They'll ask them questions such as, what are your hiring levels like today? And how do they compare to last year and the year before? And we're seeing new hiring from like those surveys in manufacturing, new hiring going down.
Okay.
Mainly the hiring happening today is for replacing turnover.
Okay.
And we also see in the data, you can look up hires rates and quits rates and things like that. Quits rates were like through the roof in 2021, 2022. They have stabilized, they've come down quite a bit, since then. So we're seeing in the labor market right now, job holders holding on to their jobs. So yeah, that's an interesting trend that we've seen. So that's probably happening in manufacturing too, where you've got these excellent wages, you've got opportunities for growth in manufacturing, so you're just gonna hold on to your job. And so maybe there is, between those two trends, and we have seen some of those losses in manufacturing over the year and over the month. But they're still hiring in terms of turnover. But yeah, overall the numbers in terms of like the total size of manufacturing employment growing, that's not happening. Going back to professional, scientific, and technical though, and manufacturing, you can dig in again to the subsectors. I didn't do that here for you today. I kind of maybe know a little bit about computer systems design, but that's something that I can look into for you. Like, what are those specific manufacturing sectors and how are they doing for hiring and for job growth? Because we are seeing differences there. So that was industries. The next major section is like guaranteed that you're going to get this. We got a lot of stuff with AI. We've had a lot of information out with industry trends and just total industry employment in the States. But of course, you got to look at unemployment too and the labor force. So this is a quick map. It's not an electoral map. I was joking about that right after the election too. This is way cooler. This is unemployment map. So this is looking at, for example, unemployment is right now generally lower in the upper Midwest. We see overall in the U.S. an unemployment rate in October of 4.1%, representing about 7 million unemployed persons that are actively looking for work. Here's a quick look at the counties and the workforce service areas in Minnesota. Unemployment in the state of Minnesota as of October is at 3.4%, so a little bit lower than the United States. That 3.4% represents approximately 106,000 Minnesotans that are actively looking for work. So that's a big part of the definition of unemployment, actively looking for work. There are 3 levels of unemployment above this. The U3 level that I just mentioned. There's U4, discouraged workers, U5, marginally attached workers, and U6, part-time underemployed workers. When we go to the U6 level, including all of those measurements, unemployment in Minnesota is at 6.2%. You can see where unemployment is a little bit higher in certain areas, a little bit lower in other areas, but overall, you're seeing like 3.5%, 3.4%, 3.3% in some of those areas of northeast Minnesota. Use the same color spectrum every time. Unemployment is low across the whole state of Minnesota. You're just seeing lower ones in like southwest, 1.5, 1.8, 2%. The 3.4%, it's a little bit higher, of course, than we hit a low of 2.3% in the spring months of 2022. We were at 2.8% last year in October. So unemployment has ticked up over the year. We have seen some layoff events happening. You can look those up through Indeed and see what companies are laying off workers, what industries they might be in. IT, for example, retail trade, although holiday hiring is happening. Actually, we're seeing some pushes now for summer hiring. Pushes for summer hiring will happen before you know it. Anyway, unemployment is going up a little bit, but it's still very low, especially, again, like I was saying before, with job postings. Unemployment is at around the same level that it was in 2018 and 2019. So overall, we still have a very tight labor market where we have about 0.5 to 0.6 unemployed persons for every job opening that's out there. I'll just steal my thunder from later. Again, about 106,000 unemployed persons. I was talking about job openings. According to our JVS data, job vacancy survey from 2023, Minnesota had 140,000 job openings. According to JOLTS data that just came out not too long ago, Minnesota has 193,000 job openings, and it jumped up from August to October. So we've seen an increase in job openings over the last couple of months. Overall, we have seen that decrease. We had over 200,000 job openings in 2022. So overall, I'll just summarize, we've seen a stabilization of the labor market in terms of slightly decreasing job openings from their record highs, slightly increasing unemployment from its record lows, but again, looking at the long term, still very tight labor market conditions that are similar to what we had in 2018 and in 2019. The big difference now, though, is looking at things like AI, and looking at the greater impact of automation, and looking at what are those industries that have grown the most since 2019, or are still experiencing some weaknesses and some challenges from 2019 due to COVID.
I found it interesting. My wife and I were up in Grand Marais about a month ago, and we were at a restaurant, and we noticed the server had an accent. So I asked him, where are you from? He said, Romania. And he was saying that there are about 50 folks that do summer and fall jobs in the Grand Marais area just from Romania.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I saw that too when we were doing like our lake trip up in north central Minnesota.
Yeah.
And some of these like resorty kind of areas around the lake hire a lot of folks from like Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Which was really interesting to see. And then if you go out to some towns in greater Minnesota, like Willmar, Albert Lea, Austin, with some manufacturing out there, you'll see that there's big influxes of immigrants and foreign-born persons from really specific areas of the globe. So it's really eye-opening to see different migration patterns into the state of Minnesota, into different areas, into different industries. So you can start to look at that with some of the data that we have too. But speaking of which, with demographics, I'll just skip past those. You can look at demographic data with this information too. So I broke it down by the different measurements of unemployment, U3 to U6. You can look at long-term share of unemployment. About 14% of the 106,000 unemployed have been unemployed for 6 months or longer. Presents its own set of challenges. And then you can also look at demographics in terms of race and ethnicity, age, educational attainment, veteran status, disability status, and so on.
Of the 109, sorry to go back for a second, of the 193,000 job openings, do they split those into full-time, part-time?
We do with our JVS data though. So for the 140,000 job openings that we showed in annual 2023, you can break that down by full-time, part-time, you can break it down by industry sector and occupational group and specific occupation. You can break it down by educational attainment requirements, certifications and licenses required, work experience required, and median wage offers. So it's pretty cool stuff.
I'm sorry, you said the percentage of the labor market who've been unemployed 6 months or longer is what?
14.6% of those 106,000 unemployed persons have been unemployed for 6 months or longer. That is up from 9.7% last year at this time. And we are seeing the median duration of unemployment increasing a bit. It was at 6.7 weeks last year. It's at 10.3 weeks this year. So unemployment is still very low, but those that are unemployed, we're seeing that they've been unemployed for a longer period of time. So then also thinking about AI, I brought this up before with those that have been unemployed that long. Do they know about the skill sets, the education that employers are looking for? Do they know about the opportunities that are out there? Do they know about those different ways that they can get assistance to get back into the labor market? So that's a lot of the good work that colleges like St. Paul College are doing, offering programming to get into the labor market, into those industries that are in demand, to get those skill sets and education that employers are looking for. That's good things like MCDA is doing with your mission and the values that you have. Things like the workforce development boards throughout the state of Minnesota are doing, targeting populations that need the most assistance or any assistance to get into the labor market. So for all of those here today, with whatever endeavors that you've got, keep doing it, because it does show up in the numbers and in helping out Minnesotans.
Can I say something real quick? A lot of times people on unemployment, I've been actually over years and stuff, they don't know about the benefits. They just kind of go all over the 26 weeks and I didn't know there's one thing. So getting it publicized more through, a lot of us are helping get that outplacement activity that's important.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, different programs like Dislocated Worker or MPIP.
For the recording, you want to repeat the summary of what you just said?
Oh, just knowing that, a lot of folks that are on unemployment kind of burned through their 26 weeks, and then they didn't know that there was further assistance, other opportunities to get some assistance out there. So being aware of that and just knowing that they can get more help to find work opportunities or to get the assistance to make that final jump, to get that job. Is that kind of what you were saying? Question?
Yeah, I was just curious, do you have information or know where I can find information about that 14.6%? If there's a demographic breakdown in terms of like race or class disparities with that?
There's not a demographic breakdown in terms of, so if you Google search alternative measures of unemployment, you'll find it. You can also find it right through the main Deed website under the data tab, and then there's alternative measures of unemployment under that tab. We don't break it down by demographics for that specific indicator, but there are other resources out there that I can help you out with, like the Census Pulse Survey looks at a lot of really cool questions, everything from unemployment to what kind of assistance do you need, to mental health, to how's your household doing, how many people are in your home, demographics. So the Census Pulse Survey can help out with that. The Current Population Survey, I believe, has some information on demographics of long-term unemployment. So reach out to me and I can help you out with that question.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah. So with the final kind of run here through, I'll just go through the remaining slides and I'll summarize everything. So we've gone through a lot of things here. We've gone through AI, industry employment, different types of geographies and what's going on with their industry employment. We've looked at unemployment overall, the unemployment rates and how are they different, assistance that's available for job seekers. One of the things that I didn't talk about quickly with the labor force data is that our labor force is fairly flat over the year in terms of growth. Gained about 500 people in the labor force at the state level, so that's pretty much flat again. We have lost about 34,000 workers from pre-COVID levels. So again, think about those that are retiring from the labor market. That brings up a whole other conversation or presentation that you might be able to have though on different ways of bringing workers into the labor market, or helping out older workers, or helping out younger workers with career pathways and entry points. With older workers, for instance, talking about age discrimination, or talking about casual work, or talking about flexible work schedules, bringing up remote work and hybrid work again, or talking about how might AI be able to help you with finding work in today's labor market. So all of this stuff goes around each other.
I have a question regarding that. So in Duluth, and I'm sure in the Keys area as well, is housing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you can bring in as many people as you want, but there's no place for them to live. So do you have any kind of stats on that, or have you tried to sort of build that interaction?
Yeah, so I'm, again, within the Labor Market Information Office, we don't strictly gather the information on housing or on transportation or on childcare, but we definitely do. These are vital pillars to, along with jobs and the labor force. So we'll grab information from the Census Bureau on housing. We'll grab information from Housing First Minnesota. And some other resources that are out there on housing. I attend the Workforce Development Board meetings every month, and they talk about housing and transportation and childcare. So we'll grab that information. We do have a cost of living calculator. It kind of looks at the cost of housing across the state for a basic needs budget, as well as childcare and transportation. We got to talk about those things because they're vital. So my timer did go off, but I did want to quickly, don't blink. I've got some information on here from another excellent resource, the American Community Survey, which also has statistics on housing. You can look up median housing costs, you can look up median household income, you can look at rent, you can look at how long have people been in housing. With the Census Pulse Survey, that looks into some of that information as well. But I've got some information here on just total population trends. Got information from the Minnesota State Demographic Center. Reach out to Susan Brower, the demographer, or Megan Dayton, or others there on population projections and what they're seeing. For example, fun fact, the first of the baby boomers in 2026 will turn 80 years old. So some population projections there. And then we also have some information on Minnesota's foreign-born population, immigration, and just some of those trends. One of the big ones that you see, for example, Minnesota, according to this timeline, has negative domestic migration patterns, but we nearly make up for it with international migration patterns. So this is vital to Minnesota's economy and growth going forward. This is a summary of pretty much everything I've said so far on the labor market with the tightness of it. With job postings decreased from their heights, but jumped up in October. And then unemployment, the number of unemployed persons per job opening spiked during COVID, but we're still very low right now, even tighter than we were pre-COVID. And then the job vacancy survey data, when you're looking again through this for fun, I did throw in some job vacancy survey data. When you're looking at these slides, I always put where the information is coming from in the top. We break this job vacancy survey data down by what industries have the most openings, like healthcare, social assistance, retail trade, and combination of food services, manufacturing and educational services. We break it down by educational attainment. 63% of the 140,000 job openings required a high school diploma equivalent or less. And then there's the trick of, well, with higher education, you all know this, but the data shows it, that there's a high correlation between higher education and higher wages. So how do we find those jobs that are in demand, that folks have interest in, that have those wages, that can support themselves and their families? And that's where you can start to look into resources like our Occupations in Demand tool, which brings a lot of our labor market data together to create a list from the most in-demand occupation at the top to the least in-demand occupation at the bottom. And then it throws in some characteristics like median wages, as well as educational attainment required for entry. If you go to the tool itself, it'll actually, under that education column, it's a blue link. You click on the blue link by any occupation like truck driver or welder or anything like that. And then it'll give you a list of educational institutions that are offering programming awards to go towards that occupation. Like St. Paul College will be listed. And then lastly, I'll do some final questions, but there is some slides that I have in here on the projections data that I was talking about. At the very beginning, I gave you that blurb, which is right here, about 4.6% growth. And then a little bit more on where we're seeing that growth in terms of industries, specific industries, and then occupations. So I will end there. Any questions to close out?
You were talking about the requirements to high school or higher, and I've been seeing and reading about how the people are starting to reduce the number of jobs that they have to have a bachelor's degree. And so I was just curious about how you're looking at that and how that might affect your statistics and that sort of thing, like more skills-based versus, you know, degree.
Oh, yeah. Yep, yeah. The state of Minnesota is one of those where, yeah, so definitely skills-based hiring is becoming a thing. I saw a presentation actually along with Mike Kutzke where he's talking about AI. So I'll send the blurb on that to you, Jennifer. And then I'll also send, I got some slides on skills-based hiring. There was a really great presentation at that meeting that I went to, I forget where it was. Anyway, I'll send that. You'll see the contact information there where you can reach out and learn more about skills-based hiring, because that is something that a lot of employers have been hearing anecdotally and just in the meetings that I go to that, yeah, of course education is important, but also looking into the skill sets and doing on-the-job training and things like that. So experience in skills-based hiring, there's some tools that are actually looking at that kind of angle of looking for work as well. I'm guessing you have some of those links, but one is through a career one-stop called myskillsmyfuture.org. And then another is actually through the Deed website, just match jobs to experience. So both of those tools looking at looking for work based off the skill sets and education that you currently have.
Yeah, I have a quick question, but I was going to follow up on that. I'm not sure. I know that Goodwill Easter Seals, Alan Mavis does a lot of trainings to employers, and I know he was at the Hennepin County Conference talked about skills-based training. So if anyone's interested in that, I can connect you to him. And then my question is more so forward-thinking, and I'm just curious, not to get too political, but I'm just wondering in terms of like data, if there's any plans for you all to think about, like, I guess, at least the people I'm working with have kind of a lot of feelings about what the potential labor market looks like based off of like the presidential election results, and I'm just curious if that's like, if your office is thinking about that, if there's plans in the future to do more thoughts on that. I'm just curious.
We'll definitely look into the impacts on the labor market from different legislation that comes out or different things that happen. I'm not sure what'll happen. We'll see. But you know, for instance, like with immigration, you saw how vital it is to the state of Minnesota's labor market. So we'll definitely be looking at that and the trends over time. I remember when I first started, a little over 10 years ago, not too long into the job there, ACA was huge. And so we did like a big analysis on what's the impact of the ACA on the state's labor market and things like that. So if any big legislation comes about, if any changes come about, we'll definitely be analyzing those trends on its impact on jobs, on the labor force, skill sets, on whatever it might be. So yeah, feel comfortable knowing that the labor market's keeping an eye on things.
I just have a question. Can you go back to the occupations and demand slide?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so our occupations with a bachelor's degree or higher, the first 3, 4 are IT, but yet you said that the IT market is really low. So I'm just wondering what the disparity is there.
I think here it's showing that, so a lot of what the occupations in demand does, it's based off of 3 main data sets: occupational employment and wage statistics, job vacancy survey, and unemployment insurance claims. Run it through an algorithm, and then it spits out the occupations in demand list. With those types of jobs, there's such large employing jobs, computer systems analysts, software developers, that despite the decreases in job openings that we have right now, with replacement hires like I was mentioning before, and just with continued hiring that's going to happen at a certain level, we'll keep an eye on that. I think, I don't want to make numbers up, I think there's still 2,000 job openings for like computer systems analysts. It's decreased from before, but there's still job openings, and there's still a demand there. Especially in the metro area where you have these high concentrations, and Duluth too, where you have high concentrations of like healthcare, where there's going to be IT need there, financial activities, where there's management of companies, and just overall professional and business services. It's just a big part of the economy. So I think it's just the sheer occupational employment and wage statistics, a lot of jobs. That's having an impact on the occupations in demand tool, kind of making up for the decrease in the input from job vacancy survey. But that's something where I can look into the actual specific trends and the number of job openings for you. I think I've hit my time. I'll stick around if you have any questions. One more question, maybe?
Well, it's not really a question. I just wanted to let everybody know that I met with a gentleman yesterday who is in the development phase, and I saw the prototype of a 150-hour internship that is conducted with AI bots in a platform and progressive skill building with just-in-time feedback, and then culminates into a problem-solving situation. And it is creepy, but also really amazing of the potential there in 30 different areas that he's looking at. He's out of Rochester, but the software developers are from Romania, and he's really into security. He's got a background in the military and such, but if anyone wants to know more about that, just reach out to gina.schmidt@nhcc.edu and I'll send over the information. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful. And thank you for sticking around and have some more questions. We're kind of just at a period of time where we'll have a short break for people to stretch their legs and go to the bathroom and come back. And you see in the middle of your tables a couple of pieces of paper. One of them is labeled small group discussion questions. So this is a period of time where you can just have at it, chat with whatever groups you want. And these are just, prompts for discussion about what we just heard. But whatever you need to discuss, this is fascinating to think about how does this impact our work and our interactions with our current clients, and do our clients really care about this data or not? How can we help educate them? This is just fascinating. I also want to just point out that there is a program evaluation form in the middle of the table. We appreciate that feedback and suggestions for any future topics you'd like to see MCDA address. So why don't we just take our break? We're about 10:30, and we'll come back in about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll take it away, and we'll do a wrap up here just about 5 minutes to 11. So come back, chat. Oh, and eat. Please eat. And there's food back there. There's snacks. It's not breakfast, but please take the pretzels.
How are you?
Yes.
I tried to ask.
These are coming home. Oh my gosh, these are
Facing down.
So, you've been doing that for not?
No.
Yeah.
Dreaming on